very important topic. I'm Marlene Cuellar, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. And of course, today's session is all about protecting children's rights in the digital world. Now, I know many of us, whether we want to admit it or not, our childhood was distinctly different. Communication meant landlines. You couldn't hide any communication you were having. Dial-up internet would announce to everybody that you were logging on online. And so protection mechanisms and safety were very different when we were growing up. But today's landscape is dramatically different. And the protection of children's rights now becomes even more complicated when we're talking about children living and growing up in a digital sphere. So our conversation today, I'll be joined by a very esteemed panel to be able to share some thoughts about what the current situation is, what the plans are in terms of developing safety mechanisms, and of course, hearing their own interpretation of what needs to be done and by whom. Some of the things that we hope to cover is understanding the current digital landscape for children and their rights in the digital world, identifying the main challenges and risks in protecting children's rights in the digital world, explore technological solutions that can safeguard children's digital rights and the role of education, examine regulatory frameworks and policies, and promote comprehensive and collaborative approach among all stakeholders. So let me introduce you to our esteemed panel for today. His Excellency, Mr. Sofiane Hemisi, Minister of Communication Technologies in Tunisia. Dr. Sarah Al-Faisal, Member of the Human Rights Commission, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Mr. Eugene Kaspersky, CEO Kaspersky. Mr. Syed Munir Kasru, Chairman of the Institute for Policy, Advocacy and Governance. Ms. Dipali Liberhan, Global Director of Safety Policy Meta. Professor Mohammed Quran Khan, King Saud University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. His Excellency, Mr. Andrei Zarinin, Deputy Minister of Digital Development, Communications and Mass Media, Russia. Yes, welcome. We're all here. Let's get seated. So as everyone gets settled, I want to be able to say welcome once again to all of you who are joining us live in this session, and also to those of you who are tuned in online. Child protection is, of course, a very important topic to many of you who are parents, and of course those who are simply concerned about the future for our children. So everyone is settled in? Let's get started. All right, so one of the first things to establish in this conversation is knowing from both your experience and from the work that you do, what's the current digital landscape for children, what does it look like, and what are some of the most urgent threats that they face. Let's start off with Mr. Kaspersky.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
And speaking about the threat landscape and what's wrong with the kids in the cyberspace, and what's the difference is with when we were kids and kids right now, they spend too much with mobile phones. They spend too much time with the internet, and the main difference is that they play too much games. And these games are different. But from my point, well, I have five kids. So when I see them, I recognize that they're playing the games. They train themselves with the different skills. So when we were kids, we were playing the different games. Now they play the online games. It's different, but I don't think it's really bad. Because it's just, it's different skills. So, our parents, they were playing the different games like we did. Our grandparents, they were playing also different games. So right now, I don't see this as a major problem with the games. Just limit the time they spend there. The second thing is they consume too much information. Is it good or bad? Because they train the different skills. They train themselves to consume different kind of information. The possible problem is, it doesn't get too deep in the mind. It stays somewhere on the top and disappear. And thinking about myself when I was a kid, and my parents, it was also different. My parents, when they were kids, they consumed a different kind of information. We were kids. It was all different. We survived. So it's a good question. Is it good or bad? Is it positive or negative? And definitely negative is that the content they consume is random. It could be dangerous. The people they contact online, they are random people. Could be dangerous, especially for the very small kids. So this is the major problem. So then the kids, they are in a new cyber age. They're in the cyber age. So when they're in this cyber environment, it's different with our experience when we were kids. But this is the new world. It's a new reality. So it's a positive and negative at the same time. So I recognize that the main threats, that's manipulating the kids with information, with online contacts, and with some modern toys, the physical toys. Some of them, they're connected to the internet. And, well, I'm from cybersecurity, so we know that. So some of these toys, physical toys, they're vulnerable. So it's possible to hack them and to manipulate kids online, not from the mobile phone, not from a computer, but from physical toys, which are smart toys. So, of course, the cyber age, it's different. So it's positive and negative at the same time. So we need to be very carefully understand. So don't stop our kids to use the positive, to train the positive skills. But at the same time, we need to control the content they consume and the people they contact and the safety of the toys they play. Thank you.
Thank you. And for you, Your Excellency Hamisi?
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. I would like to thank you for this kind of invitation. As a matter of fact, it's a very sensitive topic today. The world, the landscape, the cybersecurity landscape witnesses unprecedented opportunities and risks. Right now, the virtual world constitute the key part of their learning and education and part of their lifestyle. And this is we have a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. Today, the digital world is an opportunity to express themselves and to prove their existence, and this is a huge world, and it's an opportunity to avoid the educational divide, and but at the same time it poses a lot of risk for their emotional and psychological health and mental health, and one of the key challenges is the manipulation and abuse and bullying and sex abuse, and for attracting them for some malpractices, and this is very worrying and disturbing for us. And we have as well some risks related to the protection of the privacy of the children. Today, the gamification and the electronic platforms combine a lot of information which are hard to consume, and we don't know the real target of such information and the end of this information. So one of the key risks for the children is the digital divide between different segments of the society. We have some children who are well connected for the e-learning platforms, and we have the majority of the children are underprivileged children, and this is a huge challenge to ensure equal opportunities for the children across the country. In addition to such risks and the threats, it's very worrying the erosion of the privacy of people regarding the identity, the cultural identity, and the privacy of the people, especially in the Islamic and the Arab society, which is built on specific pillars, and such privacy can put the cultural identity of our people at risk, especially in cyber security, and especially for the children. And I think the platform of gamification, I think they weren't designed, taking into consideration the cultural identity, and I think we should work together and between different countries to no one country can work alone. But this requires coordination, cross-border coordination, and concerted efforts between the civil society, private sector, and governments, and families, and the educational sector, to set frameworks fit and put the rights of the children at the top priority. Thank you.
And there we see some similarities, acknowledging that there is much good for children, but of course major concerns as well. Let's move to His Excellency Zarinin. In your opinion, what are the most urgent threats that children face online?
Буду говорить на русском языке. Вчера был отличный.
So I will be speaking in the Russian language. The interpretation was great yesterday, thanks to our interpreters. Well, this forum is very important for us, and so we were preparing for the next IGF forum. We were preparing to participate, but the decision was taken not in our favor. So as we said, the digital world imposes more and more influence on our children and opens more horizons for education, for creativity and communication, but simultaneously, in spite of those so many opportunities, it poses lots of risks. And today we can see that the deep changes in the digital landscape that influence the psychological and social behavior of people and teenagers. And one of the most important challenges is the so-called virtual masking. Here we see lots of fraudsters that are using deepfakes, are creating a very false sense of trust, manipulating children's behavior, and that's not only poses risks but also causes psychological traumas. And these virtual manipulations that I'm discussing, and when we are using kids' trust, they are creating a false identification in the digital world. And apart from that, teenagers are coming across different risks. This is cyberbullying and also bad content, fraud, and also they engage in some terrorist communities. And also we're coming across the problem that also trafficking and sexual abuse. And all these threats can be be devastating for the emotional and physical health of our children. For example, according to the data of the All Russian Action Cyber Writing Cries, lots of children pass through it. Lots of teenagers cannot detect fraud in online gaming, and it's very important to form the right skills of digital literacy when children need to detect fraud in online. And the cyber, one of the problems is the gap in the skills. Sometimes parents do not have the skills to have the dialogue with the children to discuss threats that poses the digital world. And our research shows that lots of parents are not certain about the skills to monitor the online activity of their children. That is increasing a lot these days, and that breaches the trust of the children and makes them more vulnerable. And considering all that, it's very important to create interstate cooperation where not only governmental bodies and schools have to participate, but also families have to support their children in mastering the digital world. And I would say that the problem becomes more and more critical when we're dealing with artificial intelligence. We discussed it yesterday when social media is used more and more widely, and like other tools are developing, and these new technologies are posing threat to the psychology of children. And I believe we need to create safe environment that would assist children to adapt to the digital world and minimize those risks. And this is why it's very important the collaboration of all the stakeholders, governmental bodies, families, educational bodies, private sector, to develop the strategy to protect our children and teenagers in the cyber world. Thank you for your attention.
And a very critical point that you brought up there about parents not being fully able to teach their children the protection mechanisms that are necessary. Let's hear your thoughts on this, Mr. Kasru.
First of
It's on, it's working.
It's on? It's on. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the government of Saudi Arabia and also the Digital Governments Authority and UN for having kindly invited. I would like to push the boundary a little bit, although I can't see the audience very clearly. How many of you, after you get up from sleep, in the first 10 minutes, don't go near your mobile phone? Can you please raise your hand?
Everyone.
1, 2, hardly 3, 4. What's a 0? Second question. Those of you who have children, how many of you feel very anxious that they are into some world where you think they're exposed to a lot of risks and you're not being able to keep a proper watch? How many? Can you raise your hand? Okay. The reason I was pushing the boundaries, basic human instinct is something we have to manage. We cannot fight against it. So I would tend to push this hypothesis. We have to train, educate, inspire the children, and in my opinion, they're very smart. Even in this year, people in the age group of 12 and below, 35 to 40 million will be using internet, which is 12 million more than people in the age group of 12 to 17. So what does it tell us? It tells us the primal human instinct that a child has is very strong even for our parents to manage. So I would like to propose we first understand what we're dealing with here. So I have been one of those who have said we need to manage, we need to find better ways to educate them, we need to find ways, because what also is true, just as people who are exposed to cyberbullying are twice as likely to commit suicide, just as it is true, we have seen in many cases, like in America a few years back, teenager committed suicide on online games, even where he had the game headset on. So it's a tricky situation. And there have been, and 60% of the people, children, interact with human beings without clear identity. Whether risks is there? Yes. How do we handle it? That's what this session is about. We also have to look the benefit it brings. Because for a lot of marginalized communities, children on the fringes, disabilities, to many, internet is a lifeline. Many of the people do monetization with very little investment. I'll give you a very simple personal example. A few months back, we have a female cook in our house. So there was a dish she was supposed to prepare, and she said, I've never done it. So in the evening when I saw that dish in the table, I asked her, how did you do it? You said, you've never done it. Her 6-year-old daughter picked up a phone, went to YouTube, downloaded it, and taught her mother how to do it. So this is the age we live in. So I'm sure there are many, many positive stories going around. And as His Excellency, the Tunisian minister has mentioned, which will come to later part, it's a multi-stakeholder engagement. And children in our first thought is, oh, children, 5, 6, 10-year-old. No, they are the future netizens. They have more power in their hand, and this simple device can change everything. So my opening remarks would be, and I can give you many, many examples. South Korea tried to control the gaming time in 2011. It failed. European Union tried to put parental guidance. It failed. That means kids are very smart. They can outsmart their parents. So we have to find a better ways to inspire, encourage them to be better net citizen. And digital literacy would be one of the key things, in absence of which it will be difficult for them to navigate these territories and maximize the benefit, minimize the risks. Yeah. So that will be my opening remarks. Looking forward to more engagement with my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And digital literacy seems to be a resounding theme when we speak about protecting children online. Now, we understand that children interact in the digital space in many different ways, but let's go ahead and say one of the primary ways they interact is through social media. And so, Deepali, as the Global Director of Safety Policy at Meta, we recently saw the rollout of the Teen Account, and we've seen a continuous development of some safety mechanisms for children online. What are the main challenges and risks in protecting children's rights online?
Thanks for the question, and it's a pleasure to be here. At the outset, I want to say that, we want young people to use our platforms to connect with their families and friends, to be able to explore their interests without having to worry about being unsafe or being subject to any kind of inappropriate behavior. And that's why at Meta, we worked with experts as well as consulted parents and teens to make sure that we're building these safe and age-appropriate experiences for them on our platforms. Some of the risks and challenges that we face, and the panelists also have talked about it, are essentially threefold, which is echoed by parents as well. The first is content. Parents are worried that, their teens online are exposed to inappropriate content. The second is, what you call contact risks. Parents are concerned that their teens may be exposed to unwanted interactions that could put them in harm's way. And the third, as my esteemed panelist also mentioned, that parents are really concerned about the amount of time that their teens are spending online. So based on these concerns and other risks that we see online, Meta has worked for the last couple of years to build and develop over 50 features and tools to address some of these risks. We also have a multi-pronged approach to safety. So it's not just about one thing. It's about many things, like we want to have robust policies which say very clearly what is okay and not okay to share online. And we proactively enforce those policies, and today we can say that a majority of the content that we have, we're able to remove it even before somebody reports it to us. We've also built over 50 tools and features, including parental supervision, because we've heard loud and clear from parents that they want to be involved in their teens' lives. And we've also heard from parents that some of them don't have the skills to be able to have these conversations with young people, and therefore we've worked with safety partners to make these education resources available. And as you mentioned, comprehensively we brought all of this together where we launched teen accounts in September this year, and we're globally rolling it out. Teen accounts is essentially all teens on Instagram are placed in an inbuilt protective experience which address a lot of the concerns that I just talked about. You know, what is the content that you're seeing, who is able to contact you, and being able to spend meaningful time online. I'll quickly go through some of the default protections that are there in place. So teens are defaulted to a private account. We also put on the strictest messaging settings so that they are not exposed to unwanted interactions from adults. We've also put on the strictest controlled content settings, so there's limited exposure to sensitive content which goes above what we already have in place, which are our community standards, which deals with violating content. We also heard from parents that they were worried about the time that the teens were spending online. So when you're on Instagram, teens will actually get a reminder if they've spent more than an hour online and asking them to leave the app. And we've also enabled an automatic sleep mode. So between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning, all your notifications get muted. So these are some of the things that we have done when we've launched teen accounts to address all of the risks that that we've talked about. We've already rolled out teen accounts in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, and we're globally rolling it out in the rest of the world. I think one of the things that's most important to note is with the rollout of teen accounts, we've actually engaged and heard from parents, we've heard from teens themselves, and we've worked with experts in this field to make sure that we're building the appropriate safe experience for young people on our platforms.
All right, Professor Khan, let's get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks, Malini. And well, this is a great question. And first of all, I would like to appreciate the IGF for hosting this wonderful event. The topic of child online protection is very close to my heart because I have been working on this area for the last 10 years. And before we dive into the challenges to understand them, how they are evolving, so we need to understand how technology is transforming for children, and will keep transforming for the future. Especially when children interact and engage with the technology. So the first important thing is that because children are using internet more than ever before, okay, so there are challenges every day emerging online. For example, we have digital realm, so our children are going and they are accessing the websites and they are going to the, metaverse, for example, the virtual environment. So these all things are blurring the lines between the physical and the digital realm. And the most important thing for me to foresight, as a foresight and to foresee the future of the challenges is how the technology will permeate into the people. Now we are interacting with the technology, but in the future we will be having technology permeating inside by having, brain-computer interface. And we will have the chips implanted in our minds, the brains, And I'm afraid that, what would be the situation look like in the future? Because if children are getting a lot of misinformation and disinformation from the platforms, but when the platforms will be, embedding such kind of information in their brain and where they want to control them. So that is a very, you can say challenging task, and we have to be very vigilant about that. So, there are two kinds of risks I can categorize. The first is active risk, in which a child is basically a direct victim of any kind of abuse. And the second is passive kind of risk. So passive kind of risk is there. For example, children, they put their photographs online and they do not know what is going to happen with them. So these photographs, for example, from the social media, can be picked up by data harvesting groups, and they can use those photographs to create deepfake of the children. And children don't know that what happened with them. Nobody knows, And this is becoming a very pervasive kind of challenge because the generative AI can do anything, So anybody can create the deepfake videos and, images of any person. So we have to see from the both perspective that how can we address the active and the passive attacks, and how can we build the policies, like our distinguished panelists, already told that we have to have a multilateral and multi-pronged approach to address this challenge. And we have to have governance also for the platform so that, nobody goes beyond, their limits. So that is very important, yeah. Thank you.
All right. And Dr. Al-Faisal?
Thank you. I'm very pleased and honored to be with you today. Okay, about the challenges, I think one of the main challenges in the cyber world is the privacy violation. And also what we see from all the attacks that happen to the children in cyberbullying and all these things. From human rights perspectives, we need to focus on the right of privacy, because the right of privacy, it's a big right, and it's included in the Universal Declaration, and also it's included in the Treaty of Children's Rights. So when we lose this huge right of privacy, this will make the children face all these maybe difficulties. And I think maybe if we focus on this right and try to promote a solution, our duty is trying to protect and promote human rights. So I think that we need to focus, number one, on this, on these rights.
All right, and His Excellency Himisi? Challenges and risks in protecting children online. Tell us about your perspective.
Child protection on the internet, as my dear colleagues have mentioned, there are formidable challenges associated with it, among which is the lack of legislations and policies on the level of every government, every country, and on an international level. It's correct that many countries have enacted laws and policies regarding child protection on the cyberspace. However, remaining all these legal frameworks and policies are inconsistent, and there is a lack of unified framework that we could all rely on. Among other challenges, as was mentioned, is the abuse and exploitation on the internet, as well as the issue of data privacy and the monitoring mechanism on this data on the level of each and every country, and on an international level, specifically with the increase of solutions related to AI, the analysis of this data as it represents an opportunity and a room for more development comes with it, or associated with many risks for the children. Also, the inappropriate content for these age brackets, for these lower age brackets and the teenagers, exposing many of them to a great deal of issues that amount to suicide, as was mentioned in the past. I would also like to address the issue of the digital divide between the various brackets of the society, as there are youth and children that have all the opportunities and the means. On the other hand, there are millions of people and millions of children cannot access the networks, especially in some of the African countries and some of the Asian countries, where the access percentage remains very low. And I think it's our shared responsibility to provide equal access. I would also like to emphasize the importance what we're witnessing of the reduction of cultural and societal values, reflecting what the internet content provided, reflecting what the internet content is that has been provided over the past few years, as well as the phenomena of addiction of social media, which is impacting the safety and the sanity of the youth, and the psychological health and the physical health. In order to address all of these formidable challenges, I think it's necessary to adopt a comprehensive approach that includes all the parties, governments, civil society, content producers, and I think this is the only way to move forward in order to come up with a unified framework to protect the rights of the children, especially in an era where we witness challenges that we have never witnessed in the past. We need to protect their privacy and as well as enhance their well-being in order to create an equitable digital future that includes everyone. Thank you.
One of the things I think that we have all clearly identified is that there is a level of literacy that has to be established. There are many stakeholders in the protection for children. We talk about governments, we talk about regulatory bodies, we talk about parents, and we talk about the educational sector. Dr. Khan, from your perspective, what are some of the technological solutions that perhaps can help to safeguard children online? And in that, what role does education play?
Yeah, it's a great question, Malini. There is a very famous saying about technology. If you think technology will solve your problems, then you do not understand technology and you do not understand your problem. And this is very true when it comes to, safeguarding children online. Because when we are giving access to a child to the internet, so it's mean that on the other hand, we are giving online world access to that child. So in this manner, so we need to have some kind of safeguards which should be implemented into the platforms. And for example, there should be some oversight of the algorithms, and there should be some kind of protocols which should be followed. So there is no single solution which can cater all the problems we have for the children. For example, we should have to have a multi-pronged and multilateral approach, which I earlier said in the previous question you asked me. What is that about? So first we have to have a framework or an approach which should be at different levels. For example, strategic level, tactical level, and operational level. When I talk about the strategic level, so I'm talking about some kind of regulations, laws, governance, and compliance, this kind of stuff we have to build. And the second is tactical. Tactical means we should have more standards, specifications for the tech platforms to adopt, when they build the system. For example, when they build the system for, children, then there should be child appropriate verification, age verification, age assurance protocols, as well as, there should be some kind of operational, approaches, which means that the tools we are using for protection of children, for example, parental control tools, right? So, and in the other hand, we should have awareness and education, so that should be inculcated into the curriculum of the children. Not only for the children, for the, digital parenting, for educators, in the schools, in our environment. So these, all the things are, very important to build a, technological solution. So it's not just one thing, we can just build the technology. Technology, sometimes fails and technology obsoletes, So that is most important, that we need to have a multi-pronged and multilateral approach to build some kind of system which can protect our children while they go online. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Mr. Kaspersky, from a cybersecurity perspective, you have seen the multitude of threats that people are exposed to daily. And perhaps in that experience, it's challenging to imagine children being able to decipher what puts them at risk and what doesn't. When we talk about technological solution, on which end is it more important, from the user or from the implementer?
I think it's from both. Technically speaking, it's possible to build this parental control systems, which you just mentioned. But unfortunately, fortunately, the good news, the kids are growing and getting more smart. So they're able to disable these tools. Unfortunately, the mobile phone operating systems, sorry, I'm getting to the technical details, they don't guarantee that all applications, they run forever. So it's possible to find the tricky ways how to disable some applications. And when the kids are 13, 14 years old, they are smart enough to find these tricks and disable any kind of protection. So when I speak about mobile phone, for 10 years old, 11 years old, it still works. When it's older, when they're 16 years old, parental control works in a different way. The kids control parents. So, speaking about the technical measures, it works for the some kind of the level of the age. But maybe it's also the good news. It makes them find the ways how to bypass the protection, to training the mind, how to behave if they're facing the challenges. The other story is how to protect them from the other side, from the content side, from the internet. How to find the information, wrong information, abuse information, forbidden information on the internet. That's the technologies. And actually this is also, we need help of the regulators to make internet services, make them must do control the traffic they provide. And also the law enforcement to find the bad guys which generate this content, which generate this wrong abuse content, which want to try to manipulate kids. And in this case, we need to have a more strong international cooperation. Unfortunately now the geopolitical situation is that like some countries, they don't talk to each other. And unfortunately, this just gives more opportunities to the very bad guys, which use the fact that internet doesn't have borders, and it's more easy for them to do any kind of crime, including the child abuse, and stay unrecognized, absolutely unrecognized. So that's my final point is that we need to have more strong international cooperation to find not any kind of cyber criminals, especially the child abuse criminals. Thank you.
Now, Dr. Afaisal, I'm coming to you next. Just one of the things I wanted to say in setting the backdrop, we're talking about children's rights. The establishment of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child took many things into consideration. Ultimately, the protection and ensuring children reaching their full potential. This was created before there was the digital realm, and obviously it gets more complicated now. But the structure of how different entities come together to protect the most vulnerable citizens in our communities remains the same. So when we transfer this idea into protection for a digital realm, how do you see that collaboration playing out?
Okay, if you allow me to switch to Arabic.
In answer to your question on the collaboration between the governments with the civil society organizations is an important question, and it's essential in providing protection to the children on the digital world. There are many modalities, among which is the exchange of expertise and idea, and increasing the awareness level in order to achieve important outcomes in that regard. We've all seen the Riyadh announcement yesterday. It includes many important elements in that regard. It focuses on the enhancement of digital inclusion, the role of AI in the sustainable development, and making most use of AI in innovation, and enhancing the governance of AI, which is an essential point, an important point related to the child protection in the cyber world, on the management of risks, potential risks of AI through creation of safe, sustainable systems. This cannot happen without the collaboration of the three partners: governments, private sector, and civil society. They need to collaborate together in order to reach comprehensive, sustainable solutions to achieve the safety aspired for the children in the cyber world.
And Dr. Kasru?
I think this is, as most of us in one way or another have expressed the opinion, is a very multi-stakeholder engagement. And I would, in my opinion, it starts with the tech companies. Because today, Google, Meta, Microsoft, their cumulative worth is almost $12 trillion, which is more than 4 times the combined GDP of African continent. So I personally believe they have a more active role to play. With all due respect to my colleague on the left from Meta, yes, you have been doing content moderation. In my opinion, it's still far short of what is required. And what I have observed, it is more reactive than proactive. We can have different opinions. And what is happening in between this transition, a lot of children are getting affected. And one of the things we have to keep in mind, this has to be a more bottom-up approach, not top-down. Because it is impossible for any government, any tech, anybody to go to that nano level. So it starts with small family, then society, then community, then nation, then region. Even before this meeting, I was speaking to His Excellency that regionally what some of the things can be done. And it's my impression, technology always leapfrogs policy. In any part of the world, whether it's authoritarian regime or democracy, it takes somewhere between 6 months to 2 years to pass a law. By the time you pass the law, technology have moved to next level. So you're always catching up. So I think we're heading towards a situation where the UN probably will have to step in, and all the members says, willingly or reluctantly will have to give UN that mandate. There's some central force which adopts these laws and other countries follow. Because the risk zone that we're playing now, particularly when AI will kick in within the next 1 decade, that will be a very, very different situation. We now talk hypothetically, but when practically will kick in, starting from the way you grade your students to what is original, what is copy, it will be a very murky world. So for 198 countries to cluster around, it will be a big mess unless there is some central force. So UN probably will have to scale up the operations. So that will be my answer from bottom up, how to scale it up. And I think tech companies have a very important role to play, because to be honest with you, they're more powerful than governments. They're spread around the world. They have access to all our personal data, what we eat, where we live, what is our favorite color, what is our date of birth. So they have more information than FBI, more information than interagencies. So the onus is on them. They are doing, but I think they need to do more. Thank you.
His Excellency Zaranin. Let's talk about the collaboration.
Спасибо большое.
Many thanks. We heard a lot about the cooperation between government and the civil society. We are studying fathers and children by Turgenev, and it's about the perception, the gap in the perception of the world between the generations. I'm sure when Ivan Turgenev was writing this novel, he couldn't even comprehend how much it will decrease this gap in the age of technology. And in today's digital world, we have essential role of technologies, and of course it plays a great role in providing the digital protection for the children. In Russia, we work with internet companies, with the providers of internet, and they should adapt according to the current day threats. Evgeny has mentioned that children in many ages can go through, navigate through bringing down the barriers. And in Russia, we are working, we have special portals from the government bodies who tackle these problems. In the portal of government services, we have a special department for children protection in cyberspace. We have the recommendations for parents, and together with our partners Alliance in the working on the child protection in on the web, and we are planning to do the mailer from the portal of government services. None of the current web filters can replace the human cooperation, and we have developed the Charter of Protection of Children, and there are principles protecting the rights and identity of the child, and we highlight the protection of the identity and privacy of data, and it's very important in the world of technologies. Also, I would like to pay attention that there's responsibility to protect the children. As adults, this is our task to show to the children how wonderful and diverse is the world, and using gadgets and the web is one of the tools of learning things about this world. And of course, we are working in our ministry. We have the program of cyber hygiene, and the goal of this program is to explain to children in simple language the rules of behavior on the web. Over 10 million, and including 4 million children and adults, participated in different projects related to cyber security. We work with non-profit organizations. We have run so many events which were related for child protection on the web. The lesson on digital world, the digital dictation. We support such initiatives, and we are always open to productive interaction, and we always work to protect the children in cyberspace.
What is taking place in Russia? Now, Ms. Lieberhan, let's talk about it from Meta's point of view. As private sector, how do you see this collaboration playing out with civil societies and government?
So, as I said at Meta, we have an approach to safety which is a multi-layered and a multi-pronged approach, where we think about having the right policies, features, tools, and also working with experts, parents, and young people to build safe and age-appropriate experiences. But over the last few years, we've gone beyond that, because we know a lot of bad actors don't restrain themselves to one platform, and they move across platform. And I think this is why it's really important to underscore collaboration between industry, between civil society, regulators, to be able to address some of these harms at scales. I want to give two examples of what we're currently doing now. One is Project Lantern. So Project Lantern is run by the Tech Coalition, where all participating companies have the opportunity to share signals about accounts and behavior of those who are violating the child safety policies. Now, this goes beyond just Meta. It's available to all participating companies, and what this helps in doing is it helps all these platforms do their own investigation, so we are able to address these harms in a scalable way because we know predators will move from platform to platform. The second thing that I want to mention is stopncii.org, as well as Take It Down, which is run by the Revenge Porn Hotline and NICMIC, which is again a way to address these harms in a scalable way, because all participating companies are part of this, and what anyone who's afraid about their intimate image being shared can actually share a hash with stopncii.org or Take It Down, and companies like us will receive those hashes. So when that content is actually uploaded, we're able to remove this kind of content. The reason why I'm giving these two examples is that we hear often that, technology companies are not doing enough. But these are some of the ways that we are coming together to address these harms in a very scalable way, and not just at a meta level, but at a cross-platform level. And it's also really useful to have discussions because, education about these features and tools and services is really important as well. So what is the role of educators? What is the role of parents? What is the role of regulators? And how can we as a community come together to address these harms and also identify what the gaps are and then work together to address those?
Now, picking up on some of the points that have been discussed so far, one of the things that still sticks out to me is when we talk about educating our children on how to stay safe online, we're laying the expectations, quite frankly, on a generation that is not up to date with the threats that exist. In my own work, when we talk about media and information literacy, we're constantly teaching adults on how to detect disinformation and misinformation and the understanding of deep fakes. And so when we talk about these persons then having to teach children about those risks, and now there are other manipulation tools that exist specifically for children, how do we pass on that responsibility when they're starting from a place of knowing less than the person they're educating? Dr. Khan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, that technology is not a panacea, or it's not just a solution for everything. So regulations, governance are very, very important, and especially when we talk about the AI, which is just the narrow AI we are having now, by the way. So we are not talking about the AGI, artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence. When we will have this kind of technologies, coming, in the future, and brain computing interfaces, so the challenges will be, at the unprecedented level. So what I would say is that because child online protection is a global problem, and it also needs a global solution. And what solution? The question is that. The solution is that because the Western world, the developed countries, so they already have skills, resources, and technologies. Mm-hmm. But what about the rest of the world, the least developed countries or developing countries? So we should have some kind of inclusiveness, in the safety and protection of children, not only from the developed world, from the rest of the world also. So what we need to do is that we need to have some kind of cooperation under maybe United Nations, ITU, G20, and G7, and many other, multilateral organizations to build the curriculum, to build the tools and technologies, to build the policies, governance, and the foresight of the technologies, because like it was mentioned that we are reactive to the technology. So that is not a solution. We have to be, predictive about the technologies, like I'm mentioning. We have, for example, quantum computing, and which is changing all the ways. So how would be the impact of these kind of technologies on the children? So it has to be, studied. It has to be, you can say communicated with all the stakeholders who are building the policies, who are building the technologies and solutions. Yeah.
I think Mr. Kaspersky said earlier, let's remember that there is good that comes along with the bad. Obviously, I know for a lot of parents who are probably watching, as they hear about the potential threats that they may be unaware of, the inclination is, let me protect my child by limiting any access whatsoever. What's the balancing act here?
That's a good question. That's a good question. We have to find a good balance. Actually, that's what I do with my kids. The limit is flexible, and it depends on the school results. So if they perform the school better, they have more time on the internet. If they perform before the acceptable limit, they exchange their mobile phone, smartphone with the old style Nokia. That's it. And speaking about education, about cyber threats and wrong information, well, I'm very sorry. I have a completely different opinion. I think that education of adult is more important than education for kids. Because the danger from non-educated adults is much better. Well, adults, they can do much more dangerous mistakes. Okay, we as a private company, we do a lot with cybersecurity, a lot of education, we do for any kind of the audience. We do it for the professionals, for students, for kids, for very small kids. Welcome to the booth. You will see the book about the cybersecurity, the book with the pictures. It's for very small kids. And we do it a lot, but my experience is that kids, they're learning much faster than adults.
They outsmart them very often. This is an open question if there's anybody else who wants to share thoughts.
I think I'll just add to what he just said. One of the things probably we're oversighting, the role of parents. And one of the things which I fear in this generation, the proportionate loss of appreciation, understanding of the human component. So no matter what AI, what advanced technology we embrace in the coming decades, the human compassion, empathy, that human touch will always be the #1 factor. Even in medicine, you may have the best AI-driven medical facility. End of the day, a patient wants to hold the hand of a nurse, of a doctor. And one of the things I can see right and left, I'll give a very simple, basic example. When kids accompany their parents, even go to social events, I see kids with mobile and pads, busy, and I've seen very few parents even to tell them that, you need to interact, engage with the people who have come to your home, very basic things. So what is happening, what I fear, we are unleashing a generation, extremely talented, very well informed, and imagine our forefathers, whatever cerebral capacity they had. So in the same garage, you're now parking 4 cars because overflooding people with information. So there's an information overload. But God has not changed the composition of your brain. In the same garage, you're trying to park 4 cars where you used to park 1 car, right? So people are very stressed. And one of the reasons you may have noticed, many of the social media-led movement has always not been successful. Why? Because they lacked a proper human face. If you look at last 15-10 years, even the political scape, what's happening, why so many young people come to the street, put their life in the line of fire, and then fail? That's a question we have to answer. Where is the missing link? And there, I think parents have an important role to play. We have talked a lot about children, absolutely. But we must not oversight the overarching important role parents have to play. And so just buying a kid a smartphone and giving access is a very shortcut route. And the merit and value of bedtime stories is still as important as it was 20, 30 years back. My concern is in the drive, natural inclinations toward technology, we're sidestepping some basic human factors which continue to shape how we make the future citizens. Thank you.
And Dipali, before we move into our closing statements, I wanted to kind of broaden the conversation back to technology. Give us some insight, because I think earlier it was said that technology companies seem to be reactive versus proactive, but it seems that that's a situation that we find ourselves in. The technology comes out, there's a rapid uptake, and the manipulation that comes along with it. But are some of the technology that's emerging, are they going to be helpful tools in being able to guide or ease the protection mechanisms for children? Verification of age, for example, using AI to detect some of the deep fakes. Is this also an opportunity moment for us?
I think that's a really good question, and it is an opportunity. And let me give you an example. I've been with Meta for over a decade, and when I joined Meta, we had community standards, and which were clear rules about what was okay and not okay to post online. But we were very dependent on user reporting to be able to tell us that that content is bad content and we need to take it down. Over the years, we've heavily invested in technology, in proactive technology, that now we are able to remove a majority of the content before it's reported to us by anyone. So if you look at the latest transparency report that we have where we publish these numbers, we were able to remove, I think, for child sexual abuse material, more than 7 million pieces of content. For bullying and harassment, more than 7 million plus pieces of content. For suicide and self-injury content, about more than 5 million pieces of content. And I think a majority of this content we were able to remove before anybody reported it to us. And that's the work of AI. And we're continuing to work with proactive technology in the areas that you've mentioned, whether it's verifying age, what are the signals that we can look for to be able to identify when somebody is under the age of 18, or continuing to see how we can use this technology to be faster and more effective. And I do think technology has a very important role to play to be able to address some of these harms. And we've been using it a long time, and we're going to continue to build on it to address a lot of these issues that have been raised today.
All right, well, there's a lot more that we can discuss on this particular topic, but I do want to give our panelists the opportunity to give their closing statements.
Shukran. Thank you. It was very enriching discussions, and I know that the complexities of this digital world, we have one true fact, which is the protection of human, the children rights. It's not an option, but it's a shared responsibility in the digital world. The child has the right to safe digital space, which ensure growth and provide opportunities for skill development. It's a space to express themselves and talents. To achieve this end, it's not a responsibility of the governments or civil society or private companies, but it's a shared and joint responsibility without any exception. The government is responsible for certain framed policies, which is we cannot prevent or apply the conventional methods. However, the civil society has a greater role to play for the awareness, education, as well as the private companies play a greater role to develop and create appropriate content to children and to their identity and culture, and as well as the comprehensive awareness and appropriate, as I said, to this kind of complexity. So, and the cooperation between international organization and the states, it's very important. No single country can achieve this end without the international cooperation at different levels. And I hope that we create a very safe digital space and landscape for all. Thank you.
contribution today. As we conclude our session, I think that we have to remember the key points that we have discussed, and also the action that we need to take to move forward. I think that together we have the power to make great impact. It's all about commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the wrong and abuse content on the internet, that's bad. Manipulating the kids, that's really bad. We need to fight with that. But now we say that the kids, they spend too much time with mobile phones. But the previous generation was spending too much time playing computer games. The generation before, they were too much watching TV. Before, they were too much reading books. So I am optimistic. We will fix the problems, we will save our kids, and that will be a happy generation. And they will have kids too. And they will face the same problems.
Thank you. I mean, I would like to conclude whatever IGF in a way stands for what I was going to say. I for inspiring the children to learn, to navigate the web in a manner that adds value to their life. Then comes the G, the governance part, where we have to do a better job to try to make it as safe, secret as possible. Then comes the F, that free the human spirit. And if you go by UN Convention on Child Rights, IGF is all about child rights. And another thing, I think, since we are having a very free and frank exchange of ideas, I would like to draw attention because I think it will be incomplete. Everybody in this room must recognize any child, anywhere in the world, life lost, injured, sick, should have equal value of life. That means a Rohingya child born in a camp in Bangladesh refugee or a Palestinian child struggling for life all have equal value. And I must say, it's my opinion, many of the social media companies are not being just, fair, and equal. And I do not believe they should be dragged into bigger geopolitics. They should be like the United Nations, where every country, every citizen has a voice. Because I have seen many people deserting social media in recent times, which should be a wake-up call. So people are smart, children are smart, youth are smart, teens are smart, and we must understand every life, every child matters. Thank you.
I want to close by saying that we're really grateful for the opportunity to be here because a lot of these discussions really helps inform the work that we do on a trust and safety space. So I want to thank the panelists for their very clear and helpful comments. The other thing that I would close by saying is that at Meta we've adopted the best interests of the child framework when we're thinking about building products and features for young people, which has been guided by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. I won't go into all the considerations, but two important ones are, one is engagement with the families and teens who use our apps, and which is why we're going to continue to work with parents and teens and experts as we think about building for them. And the second is the second consideration is building safe and age-appropriate experiences. And everything that we've done, including teen accounts, including working with other organizations, whether it's Project Lantern or StopNCII.org or Take It Down, is in furtherance of making sure that we can do all that we can to keep young people safe on the platforms. But it is a collaborative approach, and there is a role for educators, there is a role for civil society, there is a role for regulators as well. And I think it's really important to have more opportunities to come together and develop those roles. I also think that it's important to have legislative solutions, and we've also proposed a legislative solution where we think that age assurance at an app level or an OS level and parental consent at that level really will make things easier for parents to be able to navigate their online experience and also minimize the data collection and address some of the age assurance concerns that our stakeholders have raised. And I think it really is a multi-stakeholder community approach, and we need to come together to address a lot of these issues as we have been doing.
Yeah, as we know that Saudi Arabia has two global initiatives. One is child online protection and protecting and empowering women in cybersecurity. So, in my opinion, the child online protection should be woven into the fabric of our society. So it should be, very important, and we should have some kind of specifications, protocols, formulations, and standards which we are actually lacking to guide the social media platforms and online platforms. When they build the technology, they should include into their systems, because not only Meta and big organizations, they have the resources, right? But what about small startups and small companies? So they do not know about these things. So if there are some specification standards, protocols, so they would include those things into their systems when they build. So it will assure that child remains safe and sound, and their well-being is protected while they go online. Yeah, thank you very much.
I have a very responsible mission in my closing word because I'm the final one speaking, so I'll try to be positive. I would like to stress that security and legislative environment for children, it's also a social challenge, and as we have already discussed, cooperation of families, business, society. Without all that, we cannot be effective where our children will feel safe and protected. And from my point of view, internet, we have already discussed it, it's just one of those windows to all this world, and the key point from my point of view is the human communication. This is trust between children and parents, and no filters and technologies might replace this actual dialogue. And from my point of view, we need to accentuate on complex solutions that will unite education, technical protection, and psychological support in some situations. We as Russia, we are ready for international cooperation. We are ready to share with our tools, with our educational programs, and be in some cooperation to protect our children. So let's create a safe and inspiring environment for our children. And let me conclude with this phrase that our children will be smarter than us.
In some cases, they already are. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us this morning, and for those of you who took the time to join us this morning as we had this conversation. What is the resounding theme here is that there is a recognition that there has to be a multi-stakeholder approach in ensuring the protection of children in the digital realm. Just up here, we have a wide representation: private sector, education, government, civil society organizations, and the technology organizations as well. So this is perhaps one of many steps to be taken to formalize what the plan of action would be. But I do think the point that you made, Mr. Kaspersky, is probably most important. We'll survive this too. But all our children are important, and we just want the best for them as they interact in the digital world. Thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. You're already smarter than us. Yeah.